Welcome to the Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzur-Ramosi Thurlow scale,
or MOTS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode.
So Scott, myself, and Steve-O's cousin Eric went to see a movie today. And Erica...
I was not at this showing.
Yeah, thought we were going to see, or mistook it for a Little House on the Prairie. We both, he thought that was the plotline of Little Women. And pleasantly surprised that wasn't the case.
But it's not.
Welcome to the Lost Signals Reviews, Film and Television. I'm Jonathan Ian Manzer, here with Stephen Ramosi.
And I'm a little boy.
And Scott Thurlow.
And I once tried to romance two sisters at the same time and it did not work out.
And Steve-O, you have our funny log line.
Am I doing the same? Okay. Yep. Little Women, Big Trouble.
And now continue on with the plot.
Okay. So this film starts off in the I don't want to call it the future, but like there are two timelines that are going on that kind of meet up towards the end. So we start off and see kind of the end of the story. You see Joe, the main character, Amy, Meg, Beth, the titular Little Women, kind of getting along in life as bigger women. I'll say that without going too far into it. And then it kind of like jumps back to their childhood, which is kind of the main thrust of the movie, I think.
It's basically the story of Little Women as written by Joe.
But it's kind of the story of them growing up and enjoying their family life. There are a lot of like little things that happen along the way, but there's not like a super main thrust to this other than kind of Joe's writing. Joe is I guess she's the second oldest, right?
Yes.
Is a writer and is trying to form a writing career, so she's trying to sell short stories throughout. And I guess it is like a lot of like vignettes of family
life and things like that. Their home life.
I didn't really think about this before I started. I was like, what's the like main
I'll try to help you
thrust of this plot? I guess
I thought you might say it's like almost like Downton Abbey, where like not much is going on, but you're sort of invested in it. It's just their home life.
But it is like that's kind of the point of the movie. Is it's a good narrative, but it's a lot of good little narratives that build up to one larger.
It's like slices of moments of their life and their relationships and so forth.
Yeah, so kind of Joe is the writer, and she's struggling to be an independent woman. Meg is more into like domestic life,
somewhat traditionalist, if you will. Yeah.
This Amy is kind of the little brat who wants to be independent, right? Exactly, who wants to be independent, but at the same time, like really wants everybody to love her. And Beth is the little child who is kind of like
shy
and hidden away, who loves music and gets Scarlet Fever. And then you got Timothy Chalamet as Laurie, who everybody seems to love, including me. I was charmed by him.
You've always loved Timothy Chalamet. You have the biggest crush on him.
Yeah, well, he's great.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
But anyway, that's kind of a lot of what happens. At some point, Beth gets sick and
twice
with Scarlet Fever, and then because of that, her heart is made weak, I guess, and she dies, and that kind of brings the family all back from their lives that they've kind of gone off and started, and that's kind of the end of the movie. And then
and she writes the book
Joe
of their
goes
lives.
off. There's this whole like meta narrative that runs throughout it of. This is like not only Joe, the character from Little Women, but also Louisa May Alcott's autobiographical story.
Yeah, she's like an XP.
So this is all a long-winded way to say, like, I'm not sure that the plot is like, or I'm not sure that like a structured, straight plot is like the most important thing to the telling of this story. But that being said, I do like where each of these little vignettes go, and kind of they do all lead kind of into the next pretty well. And I do like the fact that it was kind of the timeline is kind of chopped up as opposed to it being a straight timeline.
I thought they handled the braid very well.
It is structured. It's structured in that way. I thought you were going to say, go on.
And stylistically, I guess let's go ahead to a little bit. They did all the color signifiers and haircuts and all of that to really show you what timeline you're in. So I was never ever confused about what event is occurring.
There was one brief thing that said 7 years earlier or something, and that was it.
But they have like quick cuts between timelines, and actually have like parallel events, so it flows into the other. But again, because they did a great job of showing style differences or color differences, you could always grasp what timeline.
There are very obvious visual
references
Touch for points. What timeline you're in, but it's pretty amazing how they made Florence Pugh, who's 23 years old in real life, look like she's fucking 13. Like, I think they did a hell of a lot better job of de-aging her than they did in The Irishman. I'll say that.
Almost anything would have done about it. But anyway, so like, given all of that, what are you guys looking at score-wise? Go on.
I want to go quickly into, and because this is Greta Gerwig is attempting to give it almost an anti-romance movie theme with it. That is inherent to the plot, the fact that all of the... And I've never read the novel, so I don't know how far that goes into it. I imagine that it does to a certain level as well. But all the characters get into, whether it's the parents, whether it's side characters, love comes at a cost, and it's not always the intelligent thing to marry for love. It might be better to marry for money. And it's the heartbreak that's going throughout the entire thing. And this is where I'm going to say I'm giving it a 2, because this movie is very cynical about love throughout most of it, which I appreciate.
Yeah, right on.
To just provide an example, Laurie falls in love with Joe. He is kind of obsessed with her. She rejects him. He goes off, falls in love with Amy. They fall in love together, and Amy's always had a crush on him. Then when Joe realizes, no, I always wanted to be with Laurie, they got married.
It's like a Shakespearean comedy of errors.
I don't like,
but it's always that kind of like cynical look. And then at the very end, it is both a meta commentary on the romance, the culture of romance movies, but I think it was attempting to eat its cake and have it too. And I don't know if the meta commentary worked for me at the end. Or it didn't work for me. So I might give it a 2.
That's a more thematic element, which certainly we'll get into in a moment. But
it's part of the narrative.
I did see it myself. It's pretty much the same reason I'm going to give it a very strong 2. And I almost could have given it a 3. It's just that I felt... I'll expand more, but there was something a little slightly off that was just enough. Now, I felt that before that, 80 to 85% of the movie was very well constructed. Like you said, it wasn't as if it were difficult to follow what timeline we were in, when events were happening, and how characters were reflecting upon those events and then moving forward in their lives. I just think that, and I have read Little Women, but of course probably back in high school, so I don't remember it all that well. But all I'm saying is, like, in terms of the narrative structure of this film, I think it was very strong, just not a 3-worthy one.
I am going to, and I'm not going to try to argue you up to a 3 by any means.
Sure.
But I am going to disagree with whether or not the meta worked for me personally. I think that it did. I think that I really liked that ending of the idea that this happy ending is her story and not her.
Yes.
And I really loved that it took what the book was and made it into, and it didn't, and like I was concerned about this after Lady Bird, because I was really high on Greta Gerwig after that movie, and I was like, are you really just going to go and do a remake of a book that's been made into a movie like 6 times already? Like, is that really what you're going to go and do? And she did something totally different with this, which I really appreciated.
Definitely put her own spin on it in a good way. I think I agree with that.
So in terms of that, and I'm not saying that the meta narrative has to work for you by any means, but it did work for me, and I'm going to give it a 3 on plot for that.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't begrudge you that by any means.
I was so upset with you saying that. I tossed my pad. All right, is that 3 for you? All right,
Yeah.
Scott. I already stamped all over your subject.
No.
Themes.
So then, I mean, it's a good segue because that's where, like, I think this is somewhat of the divide, right? Yes, I totally appreciate it and did enjoy to a large extent, but not fully, the idea of the meta narrative that she tried to impart upon it. Where specifically the example, I guess, or at least one of them, is where she's sort of pitching her novel to the old publisher guy, and he's like, well, you got to make it a happy ending because that's what the thing that sells.
She has to be married at the end.
Right. Or like
or dead.
Early on, he
Doesn't
said
matter.
that, which was a dark thing. But
Well, you get both in this movie.
sure. But actually, so like, the thing is, we talked about this right when we got out of the film. In the very beginning, it was a quote from Louisa May Alcott that said, "My life was full of trouble, so I tried to write like happy stories or something like that."
Mm-hmm.
So like, in theory, they sort of like let you know exactly what they're going for. Now, while it took like sort of a winding road where, yeah, Jo is very strong-willed, she's very independent, she doesn't want to be tied down to like the traditions and like having to find a good man to marry because that's what she's expected of her, and like having to have a respectable in quote station in life and so forth. Whereas like Amy sort of represents something that, not the opposite, but she is more into it. So like it juggles those kind of things, like those mindsets, because of the nature of the characters. But I think the phrase I want is either like it copped out a bit or sold out a bit in order to have both ways, have it both ways, as you mentioned. So like that's what sort of like tripped me up on themes. I think it was very strongly done, like throughout, like again, 80%, 90% of the film until that moment where it's like, you've built up this cynical view of the romantic idea for so much of this film, and now you're sort of like going back and like, oh, we will have a happy ending. And like, yeah, it sort of works, but also I felt like as if it was a cheap-ish move. But it doesn't negate like the positivity of it throughout leading up to that. So like, that's what I'm sort of stuck upon. So with that, what do you guys make of it?
Well, so I don't know. I do think it was a happy ending, but I think the happy ending was that she wasn't actually married at the end of this movie.
But was it earned? I guess you're saying
yeah.
yes. Okay.
No, I'm not saying that the happy ending is her getting with Frederick. That's not what happened. Like, if you're like at the end of this movie, she's selling the book and she's saying, I didn't get married. Like the characters didn't get married.
Right.
Like, or you know, that's not what happened, because she's writing it literally in the movie. She's writing it about herself. So then
why have that scene
when
at all?
Jo, because that's the end of her book,
right?
That's the like at some point it becomes
except she marries a much older, uglier man at the end of the book. So
in the real book, yes. But the entire point of this is that she's being forced to write this story that
because of institutionalized
she's being forced
sexism,
to write this
sure.
ending that she didn't put in the original, and then, you know, because like, you know, she's like, they're doing those scenes where she's like going to catch him, like in the go like chase down your love
Don't
at the
leave in
airport
the train.
scene.
Yeah.
And while she's talking to the editor, saying that's not what happened. Like, that's not what happened. Like, he's like, you have to have her married at the end. She's like, that's not what happened.
I completely understand what they're attempting to do here. Just for some reason, it was just off for me on this.
Yeah, it seemed.
But what I like
distinct.
about the themes, though, is I'm going to go over a couple of things. Meg, the oldest daughter, marries for love, and she ends up poor with her husband. Now it seems, and they have money problems.
They have
which
hardships.
is actually one of the, I believe, the main leading cause of divorce amongst couples. Money issues. Jo ends up being a successful writer, but she admits that she is lonely. She, like, just like her aunt. Like, she was successful, but
alienated.
Is the perfect word. Beth ends up trying to emulate her parents by doing a nice thing and loving her fellow neighbors, and ends up dying because of it. And Amy ends up getting the guy she loved, but he doesn't love her. He loves Jo.
She's like second best prize in his eyes.
She's literally the silver trophy here.
Yeah.
And you go the parents, actually probably who end up the happiest of all of them, but they have their struggles because they're idealists versus pragmatists in a way, and they suffer money troubles, giving away almost everything to other people, leading to the death of their daughter, who emulated their ex. And they have the old man next door who lost his daughter, finds a surrogate daughter in Beth, and loses her as well.
Yeah.
So nobody comes out, in a sense, happy.
Everybody's sad.
They have different gradients of happiness, but like none of this is what like romance movies are supposed to sell.
Yeah.
It's a very realistic, cynical, depending on how you want to look at it. Look on
/ meta take on it.
I have a couple things that I wrote down like about this that I wanted to mention. There's one line in it when Laura Dern says, "There are some natures too noble to curb and too lofty to bend," which actually wasn't from the book. I was looking up some stuff about this, and it actually wasn't from the book, but it was a line from Abigail May Alcott, who was Louisa May Alcott's mother, in a letter that she wrote to her, which I thought was really cool that they interjected that in there. And that I don't think that was in the script. I think Laura Dern was doing research for the part and found that and was like, we need to put this in. So I thought that was awesome. And I think goes to themes. One other thing was like, I love the reference to the Gift of the Magi with Meg selling her dress cloth and him saying like, oh, go make the dress. And she's like, I already sold it, you know. Just like a little like tip of the hat, which was really cool.
Oh, Henry.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
and then there was one other thing. Oh, so like there's that marriage and economic proposition speech that Amy gives in Paris, and I really like that. That kind of resonated with me, especially because especially when she says it's not for you to Chalamet, to Laurie. She says it doesn't have to be an economic proposition for you, but it has to be for me.
Is for me, yeah.
And that speech Greta Gerwig wrote, but there was a part in the movie that Louisa May Alcott wrote that in the book where she says something about like I want to be great or I want to be nothing when she's talking about giving up her art because she's not good enough to be great, and that's
all in the same scene. I think
that really, it is, and that really resonated with me too. Is like this idea of like if I just can't like overcome that, then what's even the point? Like that type of thing. Which
we're still doing the podcast.
Yeah.
After all these years,
and but
it's not genius.
but
existential crisis society.
I don't want to listen. Don't get me into a state right now, but yeah, I just wanted to mention those parts in theme because I thought the themes in this were really, really, really strong, and I'm going to give a super strong one.
Aside from the ending, I really liked the depth, whether it's from the novel or from Greta Gerwig. I think that it handled the anti-romance worked quite well for me.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing. I just thought like again, it was noticeable that they seemed to like want to like again play both sides at the end, but I think overall,
I brought this up to you earlier, but Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, when they're like, oh, we have the happy ending, and they bring back like let's bring everyone back from the dead, and you have like Abe Lincoln and but it's like it felt like almost a parody scene that didn't work well. I'm just saying, like I understand the context of it and all that. It just didn't.
No, I get you, but like it's not enough for me. Like I'm definitely giving it a 1. I think it's way more stronger than it isn't. That was just a noticeable like crack in it, and an otherwise pretty seamlessly done.
Yeah. So antagonist with me, love,
money, both.
Money, the Civil War,
sickness, illness.
The Civil War is like very much just a backdrop part of this, but like it is like interesting how
who knows how their lives would have been shaped if Bob Odenkirk was there the entire time
with his glorious mutton chops.
I mean, they might have all
looking straight off the set of Mr. Show.
But
let's get the hell out of here.
Mm-hmm.
But like the reality of love versus the idealization of it.
Yeah.
Actually, sorry, I'm going to go back to themes for one moment. Where I work, I have a lot of students who are Bengali, and they actually still practice arranged marriages. I've had discussions about that. Actually, arguing arranged marriages are stronger in the long run, aside from having the ideal of why haven't I met the person of my dreams, and this concept of love in America. The fact is that marriage means something different in their culture, that it's more of an economic arrangement, and we think of it as negative, but we're always searching out for that ideal version that doesn't actually exist. So, I think that this is very much a rebuke of necessarily idealized romance, and that is the or even ideals in general. I'm going to become a great artist. I'm going to find the person of my dreams. I'm going to and everyone ends up
settling
in a way. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think I certainly agree with most of that stuff, but maybe this also ties into themes, is that, like, it's hard to be a woman speaking as a man. Like, I understand it's a difficult thing, but they certainly highlighted these struggles of, like, the unbalanced, institutionalized sexism, I guess I'll say, which might be a good thing to throw into antagonist.
I actually think they did a good job, though, of dealing with both genders there.
Right, but I'm saying it was very well balanced. Yes,
were just as... I mean, yeah, economically they had strengths, but I think they did a great job of no one's happy here.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I think that flows into what you just said as well. So I'm building it all like one big sort of Lego block, if you will, of antagonism that, like, societal pressures, I guess, as a pretty broad category, but I think was handled quite well and expressed by the characters themselves individually and collectively to a very effective degree.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a 1.
Yeah.
Sorry if I stole anything else you were going to say. Go on.
No, I mean, I think that is, it's interesting. I guess the character in this that comes closest to being an antagonist at any point is probably Amy.
Yeah.
But that's...
I don't even think
that's kind of like
I disagree a bit, but go on.
I mean, she did... Joe is the obvious protagonist, and she burned her manuscript. So.
And stole her man.
And stole her man!
Stole her trip to Europe.
She has always done a
that.
great job of getting out of the hard parts of life,
True,
as we
say.
say.
Good call, yeah.
But this film does such a great job of, and apparently in the book she is a horrible character. Like, she just is supposed to be hated.
Apparently can confirm from the background there, yeah.
And Florence Pugh does such an amazing job of playing her in this that it's really hard to hate her even when she's being a little shit. But it is, like, she does do a good job of being a little shit as well. But yeah, I mean, the film itself does a really good job of showing her as a person, not like a
right.
She's bratty little sister.
She's not just a one-dimensional caricature. Yeah, for sure.
She's strong-willed, and she does things that she shouldn't.
She has her own ambitions and so forth. Yes.
Apart from that, everything that you guys said about antagonists, I think is pretty valid, and I think it's the real antagonist of the film. Is kind of this idea of like maybe wanting too much, or like,
well, it's the idealism versus realism kind of thing that you mentioned a bit earlier, all wrapped up into that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I really love this movie, and I've been thinking about it since I saw it. I mean, I just saw it yesterday, so who knows if that'll last. But I've been thinking about it since then, and I think there's a lot going on here. It's like kind of underneath the radar, especially in terms of like what's antagonizing these characters.
Sure.
So I want to dig more into that in the future. But
the Scarlet Fevers
lack of
random mishaps,
lack of healthcare, guys. It's still happening today.
Vaccinate yourselves against scarlet fever. Christ.
But yeah, I'm gonna give antagonist a 1.
Yeah.
Okay, Steven, continue talking with protagonist, or Joe, if you will.
Yeah, it's definitely Joe. Saoirse Ronan.
She's
the first half
dude.
of this, I'm going to just talk about Saoirse Ronan. She's an incredible actress.
Yeah.
She's really emerged as like one of the best actresses that's working in Hollywood today. Man, just every movie she's just nailing.
Yeah,
it.
man. She always.
I feel like she has a really good agent too, because she keeps getting great fucking movies. Well, I guess if she just keeps working with Greta Gerwig, she'll be all right.
Yeah.
But
it's a good dream team.
But she does a really, really great job, and the character of Joe is like very complex. Her like strong desire to be independent, mixed with her like intense loneliness in this film, really, really comes through through the script and through her performance.
Yeah, man, for sure.
And it's really impressive to watch. If there's anything about this movie that I would like recommend the most highly, it's like just check out this character and the way that Saoirse Ronan plays it, and it's gonna be a 1.
I like her spunk. I liked her in Lady Bird. I watched Lady Bird again recently. I think she's a phenomenal actress. I want to have a daughter like her one day.
You remember when we were introduced to her? It was another Oscar movie. Brooklyn, yeah.
Was it Brooklyn?
Yeah.
Okay. I forgot Brooklyn existed. She's come a long way.
Yeah.
Brooklyn was good, but these 2 movies are much better.
Agreed. I mean, and I also agree that she was clearly. I thought it's weird again because I caught a couple reviews here and there oh, you can make an argument for all of them being it's obviously Joe's story. I don't think you can make an argument against that. But given that, yeah, you may be wrong opinion. But given that what you guys just said, yeah, it's she just elevates that role so much, and she's just incredible. She makes it seem easy, to be such a complex character and sort of embodying these themes that were present in the original work and sort of updated by, I assume, her and Greta and everyone else. Again, you can see her mirror to what's happening now. But yeah, she's just incredible in the role, and clearly it's her story of her family and her experiences. And yeah, I have nothing else to say. She should get for sure should get a nom, and I'll give her a 1 in the spot on our scale.
Mm-hmm. All right, Scott, can you talking with sporty characters?
So that leaves all the other ones, her other 3 sisters, and certainly Laura Dern as their mother. I think would stand out. She was very great casting, perfect role there. So yeah, I'll give them all a lot of credit, almost equally. Now, granted, sure, we might get more snapshots of, let's say, probably more of Amy's story overall, and then Meg behind her, and then Beth, of course, because of what happens to her. But they're all, of course, important to each other and into the plot narrative as a whole. And yeah, they all did a great job, and I'll give all these actresses and actors a shout out. That it's kind of an ensemble movie to a degree, right? There's a lot of characters moving out, Timothy Chalamet. I would say he of course counts as well, and he was fantastic, almost always as usual as well. And he played that character pretty spot on, or at least I liked his version of it. So yeah, man, I gotta give all of them, Odenkirk coming in as the father at the end, sure, you guys are it's a little immersion break, and I'm yeah, whatever, it's fine. But yeah, just overall, I think all of them played off each other in whatever sort of dynamic they were set up in, whether it was the 4 sisters together, whether it was 1 or 2 of them, whether it was 2 of them and Timothy and all that. In any given scene, you could just see the chemistry between them, and went a long way to selling them on being these characters. So I have to give them all collectively, the supporting cast, a quite strong 1.
So I have 2 comments to make. Yes, Bob Odenkirk broke me out of that completely. Not that he didn't do a good job, it's just that he is...
Girls, we need some Must-Master Nairnays over here.
yeah, just his appearance and the ridiculous facial hair that he had was insane.
So I generally dislike Meryl Streep.
I didn't even mention her. Go on.
But I think she did a good job because she was portraying herself here, a cranky old bag
in a meta way,
only interested in money and accolades.
Jesus Christ. Poor Meryl Streep.
She'll be fine.
Yeah. I agree with all that stuff, except for the Meryl Streep stuff. I think she's all right. But
Pam likes it.
Shout outs to Mr. Lawrence,
Chris Cooper,
and Frederick, who haven't mentioned yet. They both did fine jobs. But yeah, I think the real stars were Florence Pugh as Amy,
Emma
and
Watson.
Laurie, and Emma Watson as Meg, and Timothy Chalamet as Laurie. I thought Emma. You may not agree with me, but I thought Emma Watson did a really good job.
I think that I want to see her do something a little bit more challenging. Something outside
she was kind of the third sister in this. So it wasn't...
Like I said, it's Joe, Amy, and then her. So they give her less to work with a little bit here and there.
She's got a couple... I think she has at least one A24 movie under her belt. I can't remember what it was, but I want to check it out.
I think A24.
Yeah, exactly.
So
sold already.
I'm on a dialogue. I like this because it was kind of a mixture of both kind of real
you son of a bitch
language.
Yes, correct.
And also... dialogue lines from the
literally
novel,
from the book.
and the way they thread it. Actually, I've said this quite a bit. They did a great job of weaving all of these narratives to keep an idea of when this takes place in the era it's in without alienating its audience,
without making it feel so stilted. Yeah.
It's actually one of the better adaptations of a novel from this era that I've seen in quite a while because they didn't go full bore. like 90s style.
Like 10 Things I Hate About You or something.
No, more like Pride and Prejudice. Something like that, going full. It felt a very both modern and classical at the same time, and it was actually that's more
said.
style, but dialogue is part of that.
It was great. I think they did a lot of keeping the same dialogue, but having a modern style of delivering it.
Yes,
so
both of you well said.
It's a lot of
good job.
Like a lot. They're sisters, right? And it's like makes perfect sense. They're all talking over each other. They're all talking at the same time, and that happening in this film, like, means you catch little snippets of like one thing, or like little clever little things. Like they turn the volume up on like one of the clever little things they want you to hear in a cacophony. Like it's almost like watching Always Sunny, the 1800s period piece.
But Downton Abbey, Always Sunny.
Right. It's it does an incredible job with that.
It's a good mashup.
So I'm gonna give the dialogue and that even plays into style a bit, but like I'm gonna give that full credit. The dialogue, the actual script is awesome for this, and the way that it's done is maybe even more impressive than that.
Yeah, I do not have much more to add. You guys both like made the two pillars and probably better said than I would have. That it works so well. It is both organic, but you can like hear a little bit of like the original, like from the that era, but it's not distracting. It's not like off-putting. It's not cringeworthy in any way. Which I personally was expecting to be like a little like, oh my dear, or whatever, like oh my lord, like that kind of shit. Like there was nothing like that at all. So yeah, it's very impressive the way they wove it to be like both naturalistic but fitting to the time period.
Just one last point. I actually really enjoyed the dialogue between Joe and the publisher.
Yeah,
I thought they had
that was some of the good meta stuff. Yeah, for sure.
I love. Just one other little thing. Speaking of what you just said, I love that. But they're Americans, so there's no reason for any of them to be calling each other "my lord." But that comes in when Joe asks what Amy calls Laurie, and he says "my lord."
Yeah, I remember that.
Which is really
a little
really good little like.
We're having to spend some time in France.
Yeah, exactly.
Clever little inclusion.
Yep, it's on to you with style.
I really enjoy the style of this. The costuming is incredible.
Yeah, fucking yeah, man.
The not the soundtrack, but the score is really good. And just the cinematography, what Greta Gerwig is doing, I'm continually impressed with. Even more so with this, perhaps like visually than Lady Bird. I probably like Lady Bird better as a movie, but I'm really impressed with how far she's come with. And don't get me wrong, Lady Bird was an amazing visual movie, but like I think this might be even better. There's like a scene where you're cresting a hill and like looking out into this giant valley as Laurie and Joe are coming up over it, and it's like something I'm gonna remember. It's a shot that I'm gonna remember for a long time. And there's a lot of stuff like that I think in here.
Yeah. I'll back you
They
up.
do an amazing job of like visual distinctions between past and present, or past and future, whatever you want to call it. And I'm just gonna I'll leave it the rest of you guys.
I'm gonna write down what you just said about a shot you're gonna remember for a very long time and quiz you about that.
Sounds good.
Ian will remember. That's like a telltale
talk
game.
about it.
But yeah, I mean, like you're right. Like I don't have anything much to. I mean, I'll build on a bit. Like yeah, I think maybe because of the time period and the setting, like that lends itself to some really incredible visuals, and she certainly nailed all that. And like even when you felt like you were in the little house and room with them as well, like when it was like more of an enclosed space. And yeah, like the lighting was amazing. I'll have to give a shout out to that. The soundtrack was fine. Like it fit, sure. It wasn't necessarily the most standout part, but for sure, I love Greta's style as well, and I'm always interested to see what she does cinematically, if you will, and this one's no exception. Yeah, very strong one, and that's pretty much my thoughts on style.
I'm just going to reiterate a point I made earlier with the fact that using color scheme...
Yeah, costume also was a good call.
To show what timeline it is, and all that kind of stuff. It worked really well for me. For something that's difficult to handle without spelling it out, did a really good job.
Yeah, it's subtly there.
Did you guys notice for Amy, when she's younger, one of the biggest things is she just has like this giant set of bangs that like hangs down over.
I noticed her hair changed
like,
the most.
So perfect as like a 13-year-old girl is exactly what you expect. But yeah,
I actually did notice that. Good call.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good.
All right, Scott, do you recommend Little Women?
Yes, I would. So again, we're in Oscar, full-on Oscar gear season. So this one's getting a lot of traction. It even had a bunch before this, and I would be delighted if it was mentioned, because yes, it's a very good film, good adaptation, has relevant messages to say that are sort of resonant with, like, again, what's going on in our society today. And yeah, it's just a very lovely film to behold overall, and the performances are top-notch. So yeah, hell yeah, I would recommend it.
Yeah, as I briefly mentioned earlier, when I first heard that Greta Gerwig was doing this as her follow-up to Lady Bird, I was not super excited.
Not quite sold on the concept.
But
now having seen the product,
the fact that she took this as like a remake of a remake of a remake of like a book of, and made it this interesting to me, I will trust her on whatever the hell she wants to do in the future.
Yeah, I'm fully sold on her next project, no matter what it is.
I recommend checking out Little Women. I think it's a really good movie. I was in a theater where I think there might have been men that weren't in a couple. I think I was the only one there, and there were like 40 people in my theater.
Uh-huh.
So, all you dudes, get the fuck out there. Go with your friends. Hang out with your buddies. I know you two did.
I went with 3 little dudes. Go on.
But everybody should go see this movie. It's fucking great.
I was initially not going to recommend it because I like Lady Bird better. But I'm recommending it on behalf of Greta.
There's no reason not to, yeah.
Because she is one of the most talented directors out there. Just as you said, I'm looking forward to everything she has to do. I'm looking forward to more Saracen.
Saoirse.
However you pronounce her name.
Strychnine.
It is difficult.
Yeah, she's phenomenal. So all right.
So what does that give us? It's pretty high, right?
Yes, Scott, you and I gave it a 9.
Mm-hmm.
Steve-O, you gave it a perfect 10, being 9.3 overall, which is slightly under Rotten Tomatoes.
I think it's earned that quite
slightly
easily.
under Rotten Tomatoes.
It's 95%.
Yeah,
Rotten Tomatoes. So 93%.
We're tough critics over here,
totally
especially
fine.
me. The 10.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, we have to go break some hearts. I'm Jonathan Evanzer, here with Stephen Hermosi.
And I just got turned down on my marriage proposal.
I'm sorry. And Scott.
On the second marriage proposal, I'm going to go marry for money, of course. And with that, we'll see you next time. Good night.
Editing and engineering by Stephen Hermosi. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Or mods?